Hello and welcome back. My name is Carver and this is the BVB podcast. Jacob is unfortunately unavailable for this episode, but my other good friend, Jake from 50 Plus Donair, back I think for his three-peat if I'm not wrong, and he's going to help me cope with the calamity of a car crash that we witnessed on Sunday and touch on the Kleines Riviera Derby between Dortmund and Bochum at the weekend. Jake, how are you?
I'm ready. No offense, I am kind of ready to lay into Dortmund. I'm not going to lie to you.
That's fine. You texted me beforehand saying I'll try to be nice. I was like, no, we got to be honest with this. We have to do
you
a critical.
Me.
yeah. I'm doing somewhat okay. I mentioned right before we stopped recording or started recording that, COVID has hit my girlfriend over the past weekend, and we've been safe since. But I'm starting to feel a little bit of the aches today, so I've been symptom free until now. So I don't know how I'm going to feel at the morning. So I'll try not to butcher all this. And outside of that, just in terms of a Dortmund perspective, I've also been somewhat okay. And it's okay to not feel okay, right? And if there's anyone that's been feeling sad or overwhelmed since the game, just know that there are resources out there for you, like BetterHelp. With the promo code BVB Podcast, you can get 10. I'm just totally kidding.
I was about to say, whoa, you guys are big time. Oh
No. I don't think content creators should probably promote BetterHelp personally. I was totally just doing a dumb bit.
Venmo request like $50 from you.
Yeah. Jake, what were some general thoughts or feelings that you had that you took away from this game that we saw on Sunday?
Well, first, I think we got to get the big thing out of the way. That Twitter post from the Dortmund social media account, like the day before, that really changed the vibes for me. So if you aren't on Twitter like a smart person, Dortmund kind of like posted this picture. I don't know when it was from. Maybe like a Pokal game, but it was like Gio Reyna like absolutely deking one of Dortmund's Schalke's defenders or something, and it said bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
And that I actually had Dortmund winning before that post, and then I was like, there's no way they're winning now. Like, that is tempting fate. And we all saw what happened. Like, that was extremely embarrassing.
Yeah, I think that was, if I'm not wrong, I thought it was a few years ago whenever we tied them 3-3 and Reyna came on, scored right whenever he did come on, and marked a few of their players. I think they were just touching on that moment, not having any self-awareness that the last 4 meetings now, Stuttgart has not only beat Borussia Dortmund, but completely played them off the field. And this time, more than anything, it was embarrassing. And we will touch on some things tactically as we go along here, of course, but this beating goes beyond the tactics board, right? Like, this was, again, the 4th time in a row that Stuttgart has completely steamrolled us, and they totally tore us apart this time. Dortmund, again, could not deal with the pressure, and their body language was piss poor from the beginning whenever they went down. They showed no bite, no ambition, no intensity to get themselves back into the game, which, you're 2-0 down. It's, of course, going to be difficult in a place like Stuttgart, but it is still possible. And I understand Şahin is a younger manager and he needs a learning experience like this, but there were a plethora of players on that pitch that day that do not have that same excuse and do not have any excuse for what we saw. I mean, you have proven winners on that team. You have warriors on this team. You have winners on this team. And it was generally, collectively, a limp, static, and pathetic performance, and really above all else, an all too familiar performance against Stuttgart these past few meetings between the two. I mean, players laying down whenever things don't go our way instead of just getting up and taking a stand against an opposition that, remind you, we stole 2 of their players from this summer. We had their top goal scorer and their captain, and they still were able to completely boss us this game.
I am also a little surprised, I'm not going to lie, because I thought there'd be a little more momentum from the Club Brugge game that happened like a little earlier. Like, I know that game was an interesting one, right? Like, but it's still a 3-0 win, and I still think that, like, that should have carried something. It looked like they hadn't played for like 2 weeks. I was really, and I think, like you said, I think the worst part was the body language. Like, they were out in the first goal. Like, once that first goal was scored, you're like, oh, that first goal, like, they're already thinking they're losing. So, I think the only bright spot, again, was Jamie Gittens. Like, he's having a really good season. I think despite this performance, he still provided that assist to Grassi, which is nice, which I think that continues his goals and assists, like, kind of streak that he's on, right? So
right.
I think that's still a positive, but, like, everything else was just extremely negative.
Yeah, just from the human aspect. I mean, it was a case of just dominoes falling, and this could have easily been 5 or 6-0, really at the
Mm-hmm.
half-hour mark. Even again, not too far into the game when this was really just set. And these players, again, reoccurring issues. I don't even really have words for it at this point. I mean, we've said the same thing under so many different managers. We've said the same thing under so many different types of squads. We have a vast, diverse pool of players in this team now. Players that are hungry. Some players like Sula who want to prove himself, and I mean, players like Anton too. You have a new addition to this team who you would imagine really would want to take it to his old side. And I do want to just pull up the lineup here. Sorry, I had to refresh. And I don't know if Jake, you'll have to edit this part or not, so apologies if so. Okay, so we started with the 4-2-3-1, Kobel in goal. I shouldn't even say 4-2-3-1 because primarily this was a three at the back again. You had
Mm-hmm.
Schlotterbeck, Sula, and Anton is at back three. Rierson at times tucking back in with the back four, but primarily being the wing back. Gross and Mecha is that pivot. Adeyemi, Sabitzer again on the wing. Brandt as the number 10, and then Girassi up top. Jacob and I have discussed the shortcomings of this system for a handful of games now, especially under this back three with its really glaring weaknesses. But is there anything that's caught your eye in these past few games, Jake, that you've noticed from Dortmund?
I think we have another instance of some of these score lines being a little deceptive. Like the Club Brugge game was kind of even up until the last
Yeah.
part. Like the Dortmund game was a little off. I'm blanking on the one goal game, but like Jamie Gittens had to save the team at the end of the
Yep.
second half. I don't think the start is very good, if I'm being honest, and I may get flamed for that. But I was expecting a little more from the start for Dortmund. I think it's interesting that a lot of the issues that you see, you also were saying with Terzic, and Sahin was supposed to be this big refresh. So I'm not sure what's going on with them. I thought they had a really good summer, and I was like, man, this could be a year where they're extremely, extremely competitive. But I think you're just seeing like from where they are in the table. I know it's 4 games in, but like this is going to be a really tight league this year, and these type of
Yep.
games, these can make or break your season, even if they're early, from just a mentality aspect. So they I guess we'll talk later about the Bochum game, but they've got to really crush them. I think I don't even think 1-0 is going to be good enough just for them, honestly.
No, and you mentioned Shaheen. I mean, he has said a handful of times now he wants to play more dominant football at Borussia Dortmund. He wants to change things up tactically. Top bottom, we've went from owner, sporting director. We've a lot of new fresh faces, fresh ideas in this club these past few years, and still we are seeing these deep-rooted, reoccurring issues. I mentioned already with the dominant football. Also, Shaheen has mentioned a handful of times too that he judges players primarily off of their work rate off of the ball. And this performance, like I mentioned before, totally static, very, very little movement against the ball. Whenever this game started, you could say that Dortmund attempted at a high block, but that proved to be totally ineffective in that first half hour. After the changes, Mecha comes off for an injury, which is unfortunate. The energy that was brought on from the likes of Gittens and even Kuto were just not enough to get us back into the game on really either side of the ball. And you see
Mm-hmm.
Dortmund revert back into a mid block, which again proved to be totally ineffective. You could look at the average positions, and besides that back three, and Rierson tucking in or going out wide at times too, as a wingback or even a right back. There's all the other players are just congested in the middle. It's so narrow, and Stuttgart could just easily cut through this like a hot knife through butter pretty much all game. And once Stuttgart were able to get past that higher mid block, they were met with a completely sluggish back line that could not execute the basics of defending from the first to the last whistle, really. I mean, again, a very shocking performance. I mentioned again Shaheen needs this as a learning experience, of course, but I was really just shocked that the team was not able to really wake up after going 2-0 down and letting things get worse. When you could still grab a result. Again, this is when you were down 2-0, it's still a possibility for you to come back into the game.
I think the one thing that stuck out with me, I just have it on another screen, but when you look at the shot chart for the game, Stuttgart has so many shots that are like inside that goalkeeper box, basically. Like just defensive collapses. I think one of the biggest indications of where a game is going, whereas if someone overplays a pass and the person that's supposed to get that pass kind of just throws their hands up and looks frustrated, like
Mm-hmm.
the mentality's gone. And
Yeah.
I don't think this is, we talked a lot about this and it being bad and embarrassing, but like you said, actually, like this can be a learning experience. There are a lot of new faces, right? But they just can't, like, they really cannot play like this again. Like, even against like Bayern or someone like that, they just can't have that type of showing again.
And you can't even use it an excuse when it comes to like a rebuild or whatever you want to call it this summer with a new
Mm-hmm.
coach. I mean, Hones, of course, has not been at Stuttgart for a super, super long time, but they themselves, again, have lost the likes of their top goal scorer. They lost the likes of their captain. The Ito, too, has went to Bayern Munich. So they've lost like big parts of their back line. They've lost their major part of the focal of their attack. And they still were able to score 5 goals against us with the likes of Undov, too. I mean, you could keep going down the list in these Stuttgart performances. Really, it was from top bottom, like Milio too. He completely bossed the midfield for them with a goal and 2 assists. Demirovic, I said, who's been in the last episode, who's been dangerous and already clicking for them too. So I mean, that front 2 from Stuttgart was a sight to behold. But again, you go like for like when in terms of just quality, Dortmund do beat them. So it
Mm-hmm.
just begs the question, like, where is the issues lies? Like, are these players? I don't know. I don't know if it's too harsh, but it's like, are these players like uncoachable, or are they able to rise up to these occasions? Because you've seen it at times, right? You've seen at moments where we have in the Champions League against these giants, but when it comes to like these consistent performances in the Bundesliga against teams who have that bite, who have that hunger and desire to take it to us, that's when we start to regress. Whether it's under Terzic, I mean, it's not exclusive to him. I mean, you saw the same thing with Shaheen this week too. I mean, it's totally unacceptable in a general sense. And I
Well,
also
Shaheen's a
mentioned,
bit. Oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. I was gonna say Shaheen's a little bit of a newer head coach, though, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Holness has been a head coach for a while. I think he has other than against Leverkusen, of course. I think he has a good track record with Stuttgart of like amping them up for these games. Like you saw them play Real Madrid, they played very well against Real Madrid.
Yeah,
I think that's something you just have to account for. Is Stuttgart, whatever he's saying to those guys in the bus or in the locker room, like he's good at motivating people. And I think you just real and like you know better than I think Dortmund just needs someone who can do that. Like I don't think Terzic really did it. Like Sahin didn't really do it. Marco Rose had 200 of a team to do it. Like there just has to be a coach that just like takes charge. And I wonder if this will inspire Sahin to kind of be that more.
yeah, it shows you the impact that a coach can have, even if they are not like the biggest name. Shaheen has been very blunt in the past too, even just in the preseason. He's shown to be a bit more blunt than Terzic. And I think there were definitely moments of the belief under Terzic, especially in his first stint and even towards
Mm-hmm.
the kind of beginning of his full-time career too here. I mean, that was his big thing, is just kind of, galvanizing the team, having that belief, tactically not really there, but the players did get under him and work for him hard, and pressing was starting to look better. But, that started to slowly tither away too as time went on. And, Shaheen still, obviously it's early days and you're going to lose games this year. I should have
Right.
prefaced at the beginning, but like, I'm not expecting us to go undefeated. I'm not expecting us to lose 1 or 2 games. There could even be a game where we really get outplayed, because it's not exclusive to really any manager under Dortmund the last 7 or 8 years here. Even Tuchel got smashed a few times. Favre got smashed. I mean, Favre was the last time he was coach whenever we got beat 5-1 by Stuttgart. So this is, again, not exclusive. This is nothing new. But at the same time, this cannot happen again. Like you mentioned, I mean,
Yeah.
Shaheen has to learn quick. And he has, I mean, he has to learn quick. I don't have any other way of saying that, really. You saw, again, when I mentioned JG coming in, he brought on a little bit more energy. Savitzer dropped back to that number 8 and finally got his wish after a half hour. You start to see a little bit more structure here and there in terms of how Dortmund were able to play, but the bar is in hell at this point, because like it was no structure to begin with, and we saw that for 1 or 2 other performances this season already. Barring outside of the Heidenheim game, this team did lack some structure, and Savitzer brought a little bit about that whenever he dropped back to midfield, but it wasn't enough, and there needs to be a response this weekend for Bochum for sure. And I did want to mention the last thing about this game was Emre Can, and I mentioned this last week too. He said after the Heidenheim game that Dortmund need to set this standard of strengths when it comes to just holding off oppositions whenever we're in winning positions, like the likes of Heidenheim whenever we were winning. Sure, that that performance overall was much better, but you did start to see it slip away a little bit, just like last year in this game last week against Heidenheim, or 2 weeks ago now. But they were still able to hold that win. They were still able to keep that winning position. And you hear that from Chan, your captain, and this is the new standard that we should be setting it. And then 2 weeks later, it's completely lost on every single player out there. I mean, besides Coble, Girassi, maybe Jamie Gittens, every player on that field should be really ashamed of what they did or didn't do in this game. I mean, again,
yeah,
it goes beyond just like the tactical intricacies of however you are, approaching certain moments of the game. This is just like the very basics of defending, and it's just the general bite that a team should have in a game like this. I mean, I tell my players all the time too, even at a level like high school, like you can tell whenever players have the bite, when they have that desire to go and win a game. It's not really the quality even at that level. It's just, do you have that desire to win the game? And a lot of the times it's going to, play in your favor if you do. And we did not see that at all for this game at the weekend.
No, I think you can take losing, but a loss where they just give up is just unacceptable. So
yeah, it's embarrassing. I can't remember the last time we lost. I mean, besides the Stuttgart one in recent years, a game like that. I mean, sure, we've gotten thrashed by Bayern. We've lost like 4-0 and 4-1 to Leipzig. But this Stuttgart really are kind of like our new kryptonite. We've gotten a result in Munich here recently, which is, I think, going to be great for just going back there in the future for our mentality, in the near future at least. But Stuttgart have had our number for quite some time now, and there should have been a response this game. But now Sahin hopefully has plenty of homework to do and analyzing to do come next time around in the reverse fixture here in the spring, because this cannot happen again with 4 times in a row now.
God, if they play like that the second time, that would be
happened 4 times.
Really, really scary. Sebastian Hoeneß got the Dortmund Wi-Fi password. Like, how's he preparing for this so well? What's going on?
But I mean, you saw too, like in their patterns of attack for Stuttgart, they knew how to play through us too. I mentioned too, like you look at our shape and very narrow. Also, Stuttgart attacked that left side a lot, so oppositions know exactly where to exploit us in those certain spaces. I mean, it's no secret that Dortmund do not have a left back that we are trusting at the moment, so we are playing our best center half out of position, along with a handful of other players, like I mentioned with Savitzer already, of course, too. But, I mean, you have, again, Schlotterbeck, who I think is your best center half, is playing out wide, and you still have the likes of Benzibaini that you could play back there. He's got the grit in him. I mean, I'm sure you could have his criticism of him, but he is someone that's not going to, have piss poor body language. If you're not fancying Benzibaini, just throw Rierson on the left back, and then you can have Couto come on too. But this experimenting with the back three needs to end and die with this game at Stuttgart.
You're so right, though. Benzibaini would have been the perfect player for this game because, like you said, he has his criticism, but that is the one thing he does not have is giving up, like, for better or for worse.
Yeah. He came on in the second half, and, like, we still conceded plenty of goals, but still, I think it was already gone. Even in the first few minutes, it was gone. It needs to be from the beginning. We need to have a clear game plan in mind, like we had against Heidenheim, in order for us to have any sort of sniff of a game against Stuttgart. But anyway, let's get off of that. I've said too much already. So we have, again, another derby here at the weekend under Dortmund and Bochum. It is, now that I'm blanking, it's actually another Friday afternoon game. We've had 2 already this season, which is kind of crazy. 2 in only a matter of weeks. I mentioned before, but this has to be a response. It's at home. It's against an opposition that is winless so far in the league. Recently drew against Holstein Kiel. And then fun fact for you, Jake, if you didn't know, their loss to Cologne back in April was the game that got their previous manager, Thomas Lesch, sacked. So a little bit of a history for you there if you didn't know.
That normally happens to us. Not sure how we did to someone else.
Right.
Allegedly.
A little takeaway before the relegation there. This has to be a response from top bottom. I mean, tactically, there has to be changes. In terms of personnel, there has to be changes. I've seen a lot of people saying that Reina should be starting this game over Brandt, given Brandt just did not have a good performance whatsoever. Obviously it depends if Reina's going to be fit. He was unavailable for this game due to injury. But outside of that, I've already mentioned a few, like the back line needs to be different. The midfield needs to look different. Metch is going to be out, so of course there's going to be some changes there. And then with the attack too, we should be suiting more to our wingers because at the moment, neither of them are really able to get involved whether it's Malin. I mean, Adeyemi didn't have the greatest game either. Showed a little bit of regression there, but still, generally, collectively, just needs to be better. Did you have any thoughts about this one this weekend?
Well, first, since you guys are never going to play Schalke again, I think we got to make this the new derby.
Right. That's what I was thinking earlier.
The other part of this is I do have some bad news in looking over this. I think this might be a tougher game than people are thinking. So you have them losing to Leipzig to start the season off 1-0. 2-0 loss to Gladbach, whatever, you have those. A 2-1 loss to Freiburg, where they were pretty in that game. And then their draw to Kiel, which Kiel kind of like equalized in the last few minutes. So they've kind of had an unlucky start to the season. I think they're still bad, but I don't think this is a game you should overlook, if that makes sense. So if you go in there with that same energy that you went to Stuttgart, like, I don't think that's going to be easy points like people would think. Like, they still have to play how they should be playing. Like, they can't kind of take this as a vacation, especially with the chaos of playing on Friday. Like, you can't just, you just can't walk in there and think that you're going to own them. Like, they're still trying. And I think you saw that with Stuttgart. Like you said, on paper, like, Dortmund should be outclassing that, but they just played with fire and they did not care who they were playing. And I think Bochum has a little bit of that. So this is going to be a big game for Shaheen, because you have this game that's kind of a putt. Like you said, they have 1 point in the league. Like, can you motivate your team to just not overlook this and just play the plan, right? So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, despite the facts that I mentioned, I was not overlooking them at all. I mean, this is just like Stuttgart, another fixture where Dortmund have really come up short in a lot of similar qualities that we saw against Stuttgart. Again, I mean, if you look at just the last 12 meetings between us, really, it's 4 wins, 4 draws, and then 4 wins for Bochum. So it's like split right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And just in the last few years, it's been really frustrating to play against them. Of course, you have like the famous 1-1 draw too, where Adeyemi could have very likely gotten a penalty there. So, and like you mentioned before, Bochum are absolutely going to never give up like Stuttgart. They're going to be hungry for scoring goals and getting some of their first few points in the league too. And this would be the time to do it. I mean, they've also beaten us at home before as well. So that wouldn't be something new either. Having all that said, I still think this can and will be a proper response. I did mention that we were not going to leave Stuttgart with 3 points. I thought we were going to leave there with a draw. But I'm still thinking we could pick up some, just the things that we learned against Stuttgart and come away here with a home win. I'm going to say 3-1 victory for Dortmund. You have any predictions?
My brain, I think it's going to be 3-1, but that's because I hope it is.
Right.
I think anything less is just I think alarm bells should be going off. I think the big jump scare is that St. Pauli got their first points against Leipzig. Like, that had that kind of potential in this game. Right. So I hope it's 3-1. And if it's not, I think there has to be some questions starting to be asked.
Yeah, if you look back 7 or 8 years or so, if you were paying attention to Dortmund around then under the Boj era, we had one of the best starts to the league, and I can't remember if it was recent history before that or even just history in general. But then there was a sharp dip, and then we just could not get any points whatsoever. And then he was out by later in the fall. Not saying that Shaheen is on that trajectory by any means, but if you start having those kind of results, you can be. So this would be a great opportunity for you to really bounce back here, and that's exactly what the fans are needing for any sort of reassurance in the coaching staff and just the selection that we've had from the summer too. I mean, the talent is there. I don't think that really goes without being said. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll slip you the 20 for predicting a win as well. I appreciate that, Jake.
Perfect.
A little shorter of an episode today. That's probably because I'm hosting and I'm scrambling here. But Jake, is there anything you would love to plug for your show? I mentioned you a handful of times already, and we'll have, of course, your links in the bio. But please feel free.
Yeah, come by. We're back on this Thursday. Just the usual stuff. I feel like I've been on the show a billion times. So you follow us on Twitter. You follow us on Blue Sky, since Twitter is going a weird direction. And yeah, we're just around to hang out and have fun. So hopefully
we mentioned Twitter last week, and I said I can't remember what word that Jake used, and I was like, I would actually prefer Nazi cesspool.
Well, since we could say stuff on there, yes, I would agree. I would agree. That is him removing that block, or talking about removing that block function. It's like, okay, this place is really irredeemable now. So.
I was just now reading about that right before we recorded, so I'll have to look a bit more into that. But yeah, more unhinged shit from him. So we'll be sure to link everything. Jake, I appreciate you coming on. And we will be back next week. I know Jacob, he's not going to be able to make this announcement himself probably, but he's going to be gone for a few weeks traveling to Australia. So we'll keep you posted on what the episodes are going to look like for the next few weeks. But in the meantime, hope the siren is not being picked up in the background. I'm going to try to do my own sign off here. Have fun this weekend, and hopefully we'll get a win against Bochum, and then we'll see you guys back next week.